On the first morning of October, sunlight streamed through the vast glass windows of the Otis mansion, casting reflections on the marble floor. Everything there was bright, spotless, and so still that one could hear the faint drip of water from the garden fountain outside. Maya stood before the main door, her hands clasped together. She wore a simple cream-colored maid's uniform, her hair neatly tied back, her expression calm, but her eyes betraying a hint of unease. It was her first day, working for the man everyone in the city called the youngest billionaire of the decade. The elderly housekeeper, Mrs. Hale, led Maya down a hallway that seemed endless. "The master rarely stays home," she said, in a low, sharp voice. "When he does, everything must be perfect. No unnecessary talking, no interruptions, and absolutely no curiosity." Maya nodded. She didn't expect to ever speak to Mr. Otis. Her job was to clean, to keep everything in order. The pay was triple her last job, but it came with the kind of pressure everyone whispered about the master trusted no one. At noon, while Maya was tidying the dining room, Mrs. Hale brought her an envelope. "A tip for new staff," she said. "From the master." Maya looked up surprised. Can I not accept it?" Mrs. Hale frowned. "You don't like it. It's not that. I just don't think I've done anything to deserve it yet." Maya lowered her head politely. "I'll try to do my job well." Mrs. Hale stared at her for a long moment, her expression mixed between surprise and puzzlement. That evening, when Otis returned home, she mentioned the incident as an odd remark. Otis paused halfway through unbuttoning his shirt. "She refused the money," he repeated, his voice low. "Didn't ask for more. Didn't ask why. No, sir. She said she didn't deserve it yet." Otis gave a faint, skeptical smile. "No one refuses money without a reason. Either she's pretending, or she's after something bigger." He walked over to the glass window, looking down at the garden below. Maya's small figure could be seen near the servants' quarters, folding linens, her movements slow, a little clumsy, yet careful and deliberate. Otis grew thoughtful. In his world, loyalty was bought with money. No one was good without motive. And if someone appeared to act without greed, that was the very thing worth suspecting. That night, he unlocked his phone and scrolled through the mansion's security reports. After a few minutes, he issued an order: "Install a micro camera in my study, high corner facing the desk." His assistant asked, "Are you trying to monitor someone, sir?" Otis replied curtly, "One person. I need to know who she really is." Outside, the wind swept through the garden, carrying the faint scent of lavender, the flowers Maya had just trimmed. She had no idea that from that moment on, every movement, every glance of hers would be watched, becoming the opening act of a psychological game, orchestrated by the very man she worked for. 2 days later, Otis sat in his second-floor study, where the midday light filtered through the vertical blinds. On the desk before him rested a cup of black coffee, thin wisps of steam curling upward before vanishing into the air. In front of him, the computer screen displayed 4 surveillance feeds, one of them from the tiny, new camera he'd had installed. He focused on the frame, showing Maya cleaning the living room. She moved carefully, almost soundlessly. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. And yet, it was precisely that perfect normalcy that made him uneasy. Leaning back in his chair, Otis tapped a pen lightly against the desk. "What is this girl hiding?" he murmured to himself. Mrs. Hale entered, carrying several folders. "Sir, I've reorganized your schedule for the week." Otis nodded, slightly, eyes still on the screen. She still refuses the tip money. No, sir, even though the other staff say it's common practice. Interesting, he said, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Maybe she thinks this will make her stand out to me. Mrs. Hale frowned. Perhaps she's simply being genuine, Mr. Otis. Genuine Otis let out a short laugh. In this world, Mrs. Hale's sincerity is rarer than diamonds. When she left, Otis opened his drawer and took out a crisp stack of cash, 10 $100 bills, perfectly aligned. He placed them in the center of his desk, directly beneath the camera's lens. Beside them, he set down a notebook, a few papers, and a silver pen. Adjusting the angle of the camera, he ensured everything was clearly in view. Tomorrow she'll be cleaning this room, he said softly. Let's see how much her honesty is worth. The next morning, Maya arrived as usual. She knocked lightly, waited a few seconds, then entered. The study was large, filled with the faint scent of oak wood and old coffee. She opened the window, drew back the curtains, letting sunlight spill across the room. As she reached to wipe the desk, she froze. There in the center lay the stack of fresh bills gleaming under the light, 10 of them, neat, real, and tempting. She looked around. No one was there. 1 second, then 2. Her breathing slowed. A strange feeling spread through her chest. Part curiosity, part anxiety. Her hand trembled slightly as it brushed the edge of the table. No, she whispered. It's not mine. Setting the cloth down, Maya took a deep breath, then resumed wiping carefully, avoiding the money. When she finished, she neatly arranged the items back in place, leaving everything as it had been. Then she walked out quietly, closing the door behind her. From behind his screen, Otis watched it all. He saw the moment she paused, the flicker in her gaze. He thought he had her, until she stepped back and calmly carried on with her work, untouched by temptation. He sat still for a long time. On the screen, Maya disappeared from view, leaving only the gleaming emptiness of the desk. Otis leaned back, closing his eyes. A strange feeling stirred in him. Not disappointment, not trust, just something in between. When he looked again, the stack of money was still exactly where he'd left it. She's careful, he murmured. Or she knows there's a camera. Part of him wanted to stop, but the other part, the instinct of a man who'd been betrayed too many times, wouldn't allow it. Otis had learned that trust was the most expensive commodity of all, and he never gave it freely. That evening he sat alone at the mansion's bar, a glass of red wine glinting under the warm light. Mrs. Hale passed by and said softly, "Maya's doing very well, sir. I think she'll stay with us for a long time." Otis gave a faint nod, his gaze distant. "Maybe, but I still don't know who she really is." He poured another glass, his voice dropping low. "Tomorrow, I'll test her again." Outside, the rain began to fall lightly. Droplets slid down the glass, reflecting the golden glow from the room where a solitary man was quietly planning his next test. A test not only for Maya, but for the scarred remnants of his own trust. The next morning, the sky was a soft gray sunlight, filtering weakly through thin clouds. Otis had been awake since dawn, holding a blank check in his hand, unsigned, but already bearing his signature. The number on it made him smile faintly. $50,000, just enough to tempt anyone if placed in the right spot. He set the check on his desk, exactly where the stack of cash had been the day before, and laid a silver pen beside it. Everything was arranged so naturally it seemed unplanned. Before leaving the room, he glanced up at the tiny camera on the wall, his gaze cold, yet tinged with anticipation. This time, he murmured. "We'll know." Maya entered Otis's study at exactly 8 o'clock. In the hallway, the grandfather clock ticked in slow, steady rhythm. The room was quiet, still carrying the faint scent of old coffee and polished wood. She opened the window and took a deep breath. On the desk lay a pristine white check. Beneath it, she saw the logo of Otis & Co. She recognized it immediately, the special paper used only by senior executives. "Oh my," Maya whispered, hand over her mouth. She looked around. No one, only the sunlight glinting on the smooth surface of the desk. For a moment, her mind went blank. A blank check worth as much as a year's salary. She closed her eyes. A voice in her head whispered, "Just write your name. No one will ever know." But another voice replied, "This job is your first real chance in years. Don't ruin it." Maya opened her eyes. Carefully, she picked up the check and set it back exactly where it had been. Then she took a blank sheet of paper and laid it gently on top, just enough to keep it from fluttering away in the breeze. A simple, natural gesture, yet full of quiet care. She went back to wiping the desk calm and composed, as if nothing remarkable had happened. Otis watched everything from a small monitoring room beside the library. He saw each movement, the moment she lifted the check, the way she put it back, how she covered it with paper. No hesitation, no furtive glances. He went still for a few seconds. On the screen, Maya moved toward the window, cleaning the glass. The sunlight traced her profile, serene and unguarded. Otis realized he was holding his breath. "It's not that she doesn't see the value of money," he murmured. "She just doesn't let it define her." That was something he rarely encountered even among the elite. Otis switched off the monitor and leaned back. The unease in him had shifted, no longer suspicion, but something softer, harder to name. That afternoon, as Maya finished her chores, Otis happened to meet her in the grand hall. She was carrying a tray of tea for Mrs. Hale. "Miss Maya," he called. She turned startled. "Yes, sir. Are you settling in well?" "Yes, sir. I'm still getting used to the schedule." Otis studied her for a few seconds. "I heard you refused the tip money." "Why?" Maya hesitated briefly, then replied, "I think I should accept it, only when I've truly earned it. For now, I'm just beginning." The answer was simple, but it made Otis pause. In her eyes, he saw something rare, honesty unadorned and unperformed. "All right," he said softly, his tone less cold. "Keep up the good work." She bowed her head. "Yes, sir." As Maya disappeared down the corridor, Otis remained still, watching after her. In his mind flashed the image of the check lying beneath the blank sheet of paper, a small act, yet one that unsettled him more than any financial report ever had. That night, Otis sat before his computer and replayed the footage again. This time, he didn't watch with suspicion, but with curiosity, a quiet need to understand. When the video ended, he let out a low chuckle, the softest smile he'd worn in months. "Maybe I was wrong," he murmured, voice husky from the wine. "But if she really is that pure, I need to know why." Outside, the rain had stopped. Pale moonlight spread across the roof, reflecting off the window where the camera still watched in silence. And for the first time in years, Otis felt that his heart was no longer entirely cold. Monday morning came shrouded in a thin mist sunlight, weakly filtering through the tall glass windows of the mansion. Maya arrived earlier than usual, carrying a basket of freshly picked lavender from the back garden. She set it at the corner of the dining table, a small habit no one asked of her, yet It made the house feel a little warmer. Upstairs, Otis had been awake since dawn. From his window, he saw the young woman in a pale, gray dress, carefully arranging each flower. A part of him wanted to believe she was truly innocent, but the other, the cold calculating part, remained alert. Today's test would be different. No more cash, something subtler. Instead, a diamond bracelet nestled in a black velvet box placed among the shelves, visible enough to catch the eye, but not obvious enough to seem deliberate. Greed isn't measured only by money, Otis thought. It's measured by how a person faces temptation when no one is watching. By noon, Maya was assigned to clean the second-floor library. As she opened the door, she paused. The room carried the scent of old wood, mixed with a trace of whiskey lingering in the air. She drew the curtains open, letting soft light fill the space, then began her routine, dusting the desk, wiping the shelves, rearranging a few novels Otis often read. Then she saw it, the black velvet box, small and slightly askew in the corner of a shelf. She hesitated, then carefully lifted the lid. The diamonds glimmered under the light, bright enough to steal her breath. Her heart quickened. It was unmistakably valuable, the kind of luxury that didn't belong in her world. Maya closed the box immediately, setting it back exactly as she'd found it. Then she stood still for a long moment, as if wrestling with something invisible. It wasn't desire. It was the strange, unnerving feeling of being watched. She glanced up at the ceiling, scanning the corners, her eyes narrowing slightly. But there was nothing, only silence and walls. She exhaled, whispering to herself, "Why do I always feel like I'm being tested?" After a pause, she took a small piece of paper and wrote a short note, placing it beside the box. "Mr. Otis, perhaps someone left this here by mistake. I didn't want to move it in case it wasn't my place to do so." She signed her name, folded the note neatly, and left the room. That evening, Otis replayed the footage. When the moment came, when he saw the note, he froze. Not because Maya had passed the test, but because of the quiet sincerity in every line of her handwriting. The letters were soft, slightly slanted, utterly uncalculated. He leaned back in his chair, his expression softening, but only for a moment. Part of him still held back, wary, like a wounded animal that no longer trusted an outstretched hand. "She's clever," he murmured. "She knows exactly how to make me believe her." Mrs. Hale entered and caught sight of the paused frame. Maya had bowed, writing the note. The older woman smiled gently. "Perhaps it's time you trusted someone, sir. Even just a little." Otis said nothing. Outside, the evening rain had stopped, leaving a pale blue sky and the faint chirp of crickets from the garden. He swirled the wine in his glass, its red hue glinting across his face. "Maybe," he said softly, "but not today." From downstairs came the faint sound of Maya's laughter, light and melodic, as she spoke with the cook's young son. The sound drifted upward, bright and out of place, in a house that had long forgotten warmth. Otis turned toward the sound, his lips curving slightly, not quite a smile, but a flicker of something fragile. "Tomorrow," he thought, "I'll find out who she really is." Outside, the sunset draped the white stone mansion in shades of amber, a place where a man still didn't realize that the test he was setting wasn't just for Maya, but for his own weary heart. The rain had started the night before. Thin drops tapped rhythmically against the glass windows, a quiet reminder that peace was often only temporary. Maya arrived later than usual. Her shoes were soaked, and strands of her hair clung damply to her face. She apologized breathlessly, as she stepped into the grand foyer, but no one scolded her, Mrs. Hale only looked at her gaze stern yet gentle. The study doesn't need cleaning today. Mr. Otis doesn't want anyone in there. The words made Maya pause. Odd, because that was always the first room Mrs. Hale insisted she take care of. But Maya only nodded and said nothing. Upstairs in the library, Otis sat alone. Before him was the black velvet box. Inside, the diamond bracelet still lay untouched. Next to it was Maya's note, carefully pressed between the pages of his journal, an oddly tender act from a man known for his cold restraint. Something within him had shifted ever so slightly, like touching a fine crack in a wall, barely visible yet spreading slowly beneath the surface. Otis sighed softly. He had reviewed the surveillance footage 3 times. Nothing suspicious, no deceit. That Maid, she was simply too genuine, too honest enough to unsettle him. By afternoon, Maya brought tea to the sitting room. She expected to see only Mrs. Hale, but Otis was there as well. He didn't speak at first, only looked at her. His gaze made her lower her eyes, her heart tightening. "Thank you," he said, voice low and clipped. Maya nodded and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "You have neat handwriting." She blinked, puzzled, then realized. "The note." Her cheeks flushed. "Oh, I was just afraid of misplacing something so valuable." "Cautious," Otis said. His tone hovered between praise and something more detached. "Not everyone is. Maybe because I've lost things before," Maya replied softly. "And I know how it feels." Otis looked at her for a long moment. For the first time, he saw not just obedience in her eyes, but a quiet sorrow, deep and unspoken. Later that night, when the household had gone to sleep, Mrs. Hale entered the library. Otis was still awake, turning through the old journal pages. "What are you searching for, sir?" she asked. "Perhaps a reason," he said. "Why, I can't seem to trust anyone, even that girl." Mrs. Hale was silent for a while, then answered gently. "Trust doesn't come from proof, Mr. Otis. It comes from choice. Just like that girl, she's been hurt before, yet she still chooses to do what's right." Otis closed his eyes. Outside, the rain kept falling. In that quiet moment, he realized the walls he had built around himself were starting to crack, not from deception, but from a kindness too sincere to ignore. When Maya left the mansion that night, she turned back for one last glance. The light in Otis's room was still on. She smiled faintly, not knowing why. Maybe she thought he's lonelier than he seems. Pulling her coat tight, she stepped into the lingering rain. And in that silent mansion, Otis finally admitted to himself he was no longer certain whether he was testing Maya or testing the heart that had long forgotten how to trust. Dawn rose slowly. The pale light of morning filtered through the curtains, brushing gently across Otis's hand as it rested on a blank sheet of paper, a page he had written and rewritten countless times, yet never finished. Beneath it lay a letter, short and spare, but full of words he had never spoken to anyone. "Sometimes trust begins with the one we try hardest to doubt." He set the pen down and smiled faintly. Maya would arrive early. As always, he knew the rhythm of her footsteps, soft as wind over the carpeted hall. Maya entered, carrying the scent of tea and freshly baked bread. She greeted him quietly, though there was something different in her eyes, brighter, calmer. "Would you like to have breakfast in your study, Mr. Otis?" "No," he said. "I'd like to have it with you, outside on the terrace." She blinked, surprised, but nodded. They sat at the stone table, surrounded by rose bushes, still jeweled with dew. The air was crisp, birdsong light on the rooftop. Otis looked at Maya for a long moment before speaking. Maya, you should know. Since the day you arrived here, I've done something I'm not proud of. She looked up, uncertainty flickering across her face. What do you mean, sir? I doubted you. I installed cameras in my study. I left money out to test you. Maya froze, though not with anger. Only silence followed. Then she drew a slow breath. So, you knew everything? Yes, he admitted, voice low. And because of that, I've never felt smaller. A faint smile appeared on her lips. Sad, but not bitter. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Wealth often makes trust difficult. But I don't work for tips or rewards, Mr. Otis. I just want to keep my job and do it well. Otis met her gaze, morning light reflecting softly in his eyes, warm and sincere. I know, and that's what made me realize how wrong I was. You have nothing to prove, Maya. I'm the one who needs to relearn what trust means. He rose from his chair and took a few steps toward her, stopping just within reach. I used to believe kindness always hid an agenda. Then you came along so simple, so straightforward, that I couldn't keep doubting anymore. Maya lowered her eyes, fingers clasping nervously together. You don't have to say that. I'm just a servant. No, he interrupted, gently shaking his head. You're not just a servant. You're the first person who's made me want to believe again, to change. Silence settled between them. The early sun filtered through the trees, casting light over Maya's face, her eyes glimmering, caught between emotion and hesitation. What are you saying, Otis? She asked, softly, for the first time dropping the formality. He took one more step forward, his voice quiet but certain. I'm saying, I love you, Maya. She froze. For a moment, everything stilled. The wind, the birds, even the rhythm of their hearts seemed to merge into one fragile, beautiful sound. Maya shook her head, her voice trembling. You shouldn't. You're the one who reminds me I'm still human, he said, eyes steady on hers, that I can still feel, still care. Tears slipped silently down Maya's cheeks, soft as the morning dew. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do, he replied. I've never been more certain. He reached out his hand, gently, brushing hers. She hesitated, then stopped pulling away. His touch was warm, firm, wordlessly sincere. After a while, she whispered, Mr. Otis, I don't know what the future will bring. I just don't want anyone to be hurt because of me. Otis smiled, a rare, honest smile. Then let me decide that for myself. Just don't leave. Their eyes met, a quiet promise, passing between them without words. Far beyond, the sun had climbed higher, spilling gold across the garden. The night's rain had washed away every trace of suspicion of distance. In that moment, under the morning light, Otis realized that true wealth wasn't in what he owned, but in the courage to trust again. And Maya, the girl with the gentle smile and honest heart, was the beginning of that change. She whispered, her voice barely audible, I'm not going anywhere, Otis. A soft breeze swept through the rose garden. Two souls, once from different worlds, now sat beneath the same bright morning, where doubt had given way to faith and a quiet test had become love.